You ever have one of those moments where your brain just stops? Where you're standing there, holding something ordinary, like a couple bags of groceries, and suddenly the world tilts sideways because someone decided to rewrite reality in front of you. That was me, Friday evening, 5:47 p.m., standing in my own driveway, staring at my neighbor Karen as she called 911 on me for parking my truck at my own damn ranch. 911, illegal parking on my street, she said, voice sharp as glass. I froze mid-step, grocery bags hanging from my fingers. Karen, what street? This is my driveway. She ignored me, eyes locked on my F-150 like it was a tank pointed at her house. Send officers immediately, she told the dispatcher. It's an HOA emergency. An HOA emergency. Now, for context, Miller Ranch isn't part of any HOA. That's why I bought it. 10 acres, no covenants, no committees. Just peace, quiet, and a gate that says private property in letters big enough to stop a train. Or so I thought. 3 minutes later, sirens. 3 cruisers hit the road like it was a bank robbery. Blue and red lights strobed across the oaks, reflecting off the Miller Ranch sign I'd spent all weekend restoring. The sheriff, Bradley Collins, stepped out first, middle-aged, polite but tired, the kind of guy who's seen every flavor of nonsense. 2 younger officers flanked him, scanning for a threat that didn't exist. Evening, sir, he said, tone cautious. We got a call about illegal parking and disturbance of the peace. I lifted my grocery bags like proof of innocence. Sheriff, this is my house. That's my truck. I just got home from work. Before he could reply, Karen appeared like she'd been waiting for her cue. Folder in hand, pearls, pressed blazer, a walking HOA brochure. Sheriff, this man's vehicle violates community standards, she said, voice sugary but tight. Section 15.3 of the covenant clearly prohibits commercial trucks in residential zones. I blinked. Covenant? There is no covenant. She gave me a look that could curdle milk. Ignorance of the law isn't an excuse, Mr. Miller. The sheriff frowned, flipping through her folder. It was thick, tabbed, color-coded, sealed. For a second, even he looked unsure. These appear official, he said slowly, and my heart dropped. They looked real. Stamps, signatures, notary marks. My brain scrambled to make sense of it. I'd checked everything before buying this land. Title, deed, legal filings. Nothing about an HOA. Sir, Collins said, if these documents are legitimate, you might be in violation. Violation of what? I asked, disbelief cracking my voice. Parking on my own land. Karen folded her arms, perfectly calm. Community standards exist for a reason. Large commercial vehicles reduce property values. The absurdity hit me so hard I almost laughed. My truck, a dusty Ford F-150, apparently endangered the neighborhood. Neighbors started drifting out like moths to a flame. Mrs. Anderson, the gardener. The Wilson kids with their phones up. A dozen lenses pointed at me while my so-called neighbor accused me of breaking laws that didn't exist. See, Karen said to the sheriff, gesturing like she was unveiling a crime scene. This is what happens when you let people think they can do whatever they want. The sheriff's patience was hanging by a thread. He sighed. All right, let's calm down. Ma'am, I'll verify these filings. Sir, maybe keep the truck behind the gate until we sort this out. Karen smiled like she'd just won a case in court. That night, I sat in the dark, lights off, replaying every second. I couldn't shake the image of her, so confident, so prepared, like she'd rehearsed the whole thing. At 9 p.m., my phone buzzed. Email from an address I didn't recognize. Meadowbrook Valley HOA Compliance Department. The subject line, Notice of Violation, Immediate Action Required. The body was worse. Photos of my truck, legal citations, a fine of $500 due in 48 hours. I stared at it, rage boiling up behind my ribs. This wasn't bureaucracy. It was an ambush. The next morning, I called the county clerk. Sir, she said after pulling the record, your property has no HOA attachment. None. Ever. Relief hit, but it lasted maybe an hour. Because around noon, I walked outside and froze. A bright yellow boot clamped to my rear tire. There was a ticket taped to my windshield, same header as the email, Meadowbrook Valley HOA Enforcement, Violation 15.3. When I called the number, she answered instantly. Meadowbrook Valley Association, Karen speaking. Karen, I said, my voice shaking. You booted my truck? Correction, she replied, all corporate sweetness. Your non-compliant vehicle has been immobilized until fines are paid. On my property. Property lines don't override community law, she said. You'll find that in your covenant package. I hung up before I said something I'd regret. An hour later, a tow truck rolled in, uninvited. Big guy in a neon vest hopped out. Lady across the street called, he said. Said you needed compliance removal. I told him to leave. He shrugged. She's got paperwork, man. Looks official. It took $200 cash just to get the boot removed. Over the next few days, the harassment snowballed. Orange cones appeared blocking my gate. No parking signs sprouted overnight. Then came a code enforcement officer. Taking photos like my property was a crime scene. Neighbors stopped waving. Mrs. Anderson turned her back when I passed. The Wilson kids, once friendly, now pointed their phones at me, giggling. Karen's operation was working. She didn't need the law. She had perception. And perception was enough to ruin a man. On Thursday evening, she came back with her folder and 2 board members. We're here for a compliance inspection, she said. You're trespassing, I replied. Correction, she said smoothly. Community property. Before I could stop them, they were photographing my truck again, measuring, muttering about excess weight. You can't tow my truck, I said, stepping forward. She smiled like a teacher catching a child lying. Emergency authority clause, Mr. Miller. The tow cable clanked. My truck jerked forward, helpless, and I watched the last piece of my freedom disappear down the road, taillights vanishing into dust. That night, under the flickering porch light, I realized something bone deep. Karen Williams wasn't just a nosy neighbor. She was a predator with a clipboard. And somehow, she'd found a way to make the law her weapon. By Monday morning, my world had shrunk down to a few sheets of paper and a sick feeling in my gut. Karen had stripped away everything that felt normal. The truck was gone. The mailbox overflowed with violation letters. Even the grocery delivery guy avoided my driveway now. That yellow boot had been the start. The towing had been the humiliation. But this quiet ostracism, was the part that broke you down. When the people around you decided that silence was safer than standing next to you. Tuesday, I drove a borrowed sedan downtown to meet with a lawyer, Roberts, recommended by a buddy from the bar. His office looked like it hadn't seen sunlight since the 90s. Files stacked in leaning towers, half-dead plant by the window. He flipped through Karen's documents, with the same frown a doctor makes before giving bad news. These are good, he murmured. Too good. Whoever forged them knew what they were doing. So they're fake. He shrugged. Almost certainly. But proving it will take forensic review, county authentication, sworn depositions, expensive stuff. You're looking at 15 grand, minimum. 15, I choked. She's faking an HOA, and I'm the one who has to pay to prove it? That's how civil law works, he said. Burdens on the homeowner. I left the office feeling smaller than when I'd walked in. By evening, another notice was taped to my door. Emergency HOA meeting, Thursday, 7 p.m. Agenda, non-compliant property owners threatening community safety. No name, but everyone knew who they meant. I told myself not to go, but staying home felt like surrender. So Thursday came, and I went. The community center buzzed with polite outrage. Karen stood at the front like a CEO unveiling quarterly earnings, clicker in hand, slideshow glowing behind her. My truck, my driveway, my name in red font. Residents, she said brightly, we pride ourselves on safety. Unfortunately, one member continues to disregard our shared values. I sat near the back. Every time she said, one member, 20 heads turned. She played recordings, edited, spliced, to make me sound hostile. Showed documents stamped with my signature, supposedly acknowledging HOA membership. I'd never signed anything like that. When she opened the floor for comments, they lined up. Neighbors I'd helped move furniture, people whose pets I'd watched, each one saying how troubled they were by my behavior. Then came the vote. 4 board members raised their hands. The 5th, Robert Collins, the quiet one, hesitated just long enough for hope to hurt, then lifted his hand too. Unanimous. Karen smiled sweetly. Thank you, everyone. Motion passes. I walked out before the applause stopped. The air outside was thick, the kind that sticks to your throat. My truck was gone again when I got home. That night, I stared at my porch light, flickering weakly, and thought, maybe she can take everything. But the next morning, an email changed everything. No name, no signature. Just, check County Ordinance 14.2. Retroactive covenant filings require unanimous consent. Also, verify Inspector Smith's credentials on your violation report. It sounded like nonsense, but desperation makes you curious. I pulled out the report Karen had shoved under my nose, the one signed by Inspector Charles Smith. A quick search on the state database made my blood run cold. Charles Smith had died 2 years ago. The man whose signature she'd used to boot my truck didn't exist anymore. That discovery flipped something inside me. Fear turned into focus. I spent the next 48 hours buried in county records, eyes burning from screen glare. And there it was. Every amended covenant Karen claimed had been filed was fake. File numbers that didn't match any county format. Seals lifted from real documents, but traced over in Photoshop. And the bombshell, the signature of the previous owner of my ranch, Mr. Thompson, was forged. The real Thompson had sold the land before Karen even moved here. I took screenshots of everything, copied files to 3 different USB drives, printed duplicates. Then another email came. She's filing a lien Friday. Meet at Riverside Park, bench under the oak, 7 p.m. Bring proof. I should have ignored it. Could have been her trap. But something about it felt real, measured, professional. Friday evening, the sun slid low, orange across the fields. I parked 2 blocks away, folder under my arm, and walked to the park. A man sat on the bench, back to me, still as stone. "Mr. Miller," he said when I got close. His voice was steady, formal. He turned, and my jaw tightened. "Robert Collins, the same board member who'd voted against me. What do you want?" I snapped. He lifted his hands slowly, like calming a spooked horse, and reached into his jacket. A leather badge caught the last light of the sunset. "Sheriff Benjamin Collins," he said. "County investigations. Undercover." The world went quiet. He gestured to the bench. "Sit, Mr. Miller. You've been caught in something bigger than a bad neighbor dispute." I sat, but my body stayed coiled. "You voted against me." "I had to," he said. "If I'd broken cover, we'd lose months of work. Karen's not just forging HOA paperwork. She's part of a regional fraud ring. Fake associations, fake liens, extortion through property seizures. We've tracked at least 47 victims. You're our key witness." I stared at him. "You could have told me." He shook his head. "Not without jeopardizing the case. But you've done good work. Those files you gathered filled the gaps we needed." My mouth went dry. "So what happens now?" "She's planning another 911 call tomorrow. Same playbook. We'll be waiting. The warrant's ready. We just need her to finish the act." "You want me to let it happen again?" "Just once more," he said quietly. "Then it's over." That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the porch till dawn, hands wrapped around a cold mug, staring at her house. Lights flickering, curtains twitching. At 9:30, my phone rang. "Mr. Miller," Karen said, sweet as syrup. "This is your final courtesy notice. If you don't move that truck by morning, law enforcement will remove it for you. You can still resolve this privately." I almost laughed. "You do what you need to do, Karen." When I hung up, I swear the air itself buzzed. Dawn broke golden and still. I brewed coffee, loaded the same grocery bags I'd had that first day, milk, bread, eggs. Habit, or maybe symbolism. Then I drove out, slow, deliberate, parked exactly where I had before. Across the fence, Karen appeared like a ghost from a nightmare, phone already pressed to her ear. 911, she said loudly. "I need to report illegal parking, possible trespassing, aggressive homeowner refusing to comply." Her tone was polished perfection, practiced, professional, convincing. She looked up once, right at me, and smiled. 5 minutes later, the sirens came. 3 cruisers again, same formation. Sheriff Collins stepped out first, his expression unreadable. "Morning, ma'am," he said evenly. "You made the call?" Karen nodded briskly, folder clutched tight. "Yes, officer." "Same subject. Same violation." He flipped open his notebook. "And you're Ms. Karen Williams, president of the Meadowbrook Valley HOA?" "Correct." He nodded once more, and then the entire tone of his voice changed. "Ms. Williams, you're under arrest for wire fraud, forgery, and extortion." For a second, she just blinked, confusion flickering into outrage. "What? No, no, this is a mistake." 2 deputies moved in, calm but firm. The click of the cuffs was the most satisfying sound I'd ever heard. She twisted, shouting, "You can't arrest me. I'm enforcing the law." Collins turned toward the growing crowd of neighbors. "This man," he said, pointing to me, "is the lawful owner of Miller Ranch. There is no HOA. Ms. Williams has been running a fraudulent operation targeting property owners across 3 counties." The silence that followed was heavy. You could feel the neighborhood recalibrating in real time. Mrs. Anderson gasped. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Karen's voice cracked into hysteria. "You think this ends with me? You have no idea." But Collins just nodded to the deputies. "We'll find out." They led her to the cruiser, the same flashing lights that once humiliated me now washing across her face. When they drove off, Collins turned back, his badge glinting in the sun. "You're free, Mr. Miller." For the first time in months, the air felt light again. When they took her away, nobody cheered. Nobody spoke. It was the kind of silence that happens when a lie collapses. The air itself feels different, thinner, cleaner somehow. I stood there on the same gravel that used to shake under the weight of her judgment, the same driveway that got me arrested, and for the first time since all this started, I didn't feel watched. Karen's voice echoed faintly as the cruiser doors shut, half threat, half denial. "You people are ungrateful. I built this neighborhood." And then the siren swallowed her whole. The crowd dispersed slowly. Some neighbors looked ashamed, others relieved. Mrs. Anderson shuffled up, hands twisting in her cardigan. "Marcus," she whispered, "we didn't know." I wanted to tell her it was fine, but it wasn't. It wasn't fine to stand by while someone got humiliated for the sake of comfort. It wasn't fine to mistake control for order. But looking at her trembling hands, I just nodded. "Yeah," I said. "I know." By noon, the sheriff's office cars were gone. The sun was hot and clear, burning away the leftover fear that had soaked into this land. I went inside, poured myself a coffee, and sat by the window. For months, I'd stared out of it like a prisoner. Now it felt like freedom looked back. That weekend, the county news stations went wild. "Local woman arrested in multi-county HOA scam," the headlines said. Turns out Karen had been running fake associations for years, forging liens, pocketing dues, even laundering money through bogus neighborhood improvement grants. She wasn't just a busybody with too much time. She was a full-blown con artist. Sheriff Collins stopped by the next morning, no badge this time. Just jeans, flannel, a 6-pack of Budweiser. "Figured we'd toast your freedom," he said, grinning. We sat on the porch, quiet for a while, listening to the cicadas buzz. "You ever get used to this part?" I asked him. "The aftermath?" He shook his head. "No. Every time, there's someone left behind trying to rebuild what shouldn't have been broken in the first place." I looked out at my land, the fence Karen tried to claim, the oak tree she called a liability, the truck sitting proudly in the driveway where it belonged. "Guess that's me," I said. "Nah," Collins replied. "You didn't just survive. You exposed her." He told me the full story, 47 victims across 3 counties. Families who'd lost homes, retirees who'd paid fake fees until bankruptcy. My evidence had tied it all together. "You gave us the pattern," he said. "You turned the light on." After he left, I spent the afternoon fixing the dent in my truck fender. The wrench felt heavy, grounding. The smell of oil, sweat, and dust filled the air. It was mundane, ordinary, and it felt like salvation. That evening, I noticed something new. My mailbox wasn't empty anymore. Neighbors had started leaving things: pies, apology notes, handwritten cards. One just said, "Thank you for standing up when we didn't." It hit me harder than I expected. By the next HOA meeting, or what used to be one, the county had dissolved the fake association entirely. No more board, no more bylaws, no more nonsense. Collins even suggested starting something called Open Book Fridays, where residents could just talk. No fines, no forms, just conversation. For the first time, the neighborhood actually felt like a neighborhood. Kids played past sunset. People waved without suspicion. And when someone parked a boat on their driveway, nobody called 911. A few months later, I got a letter, no return address, just a federal correctional stamp. I didn't have to open it to know. Still, curiosity wins. Inside, in Karen's looping handwriting, "You think you won, but you only trimmed the branches. The roots are everywhere. There'll always be someone like me." I folded it once, twice, slipped it into a drawer, and didn't think about it again. Because she wasn't wrong. There'd always be another Karen. But now, I knew how to fight one. These days, I keep a copy of those fake documents framed in my office. A reminder that not every official stamp means justice, and not every person in charge deserves obedience. Sometimes, late at night, I replay those sirens in my head, not as trauma anymore, but as proof that the truth can be louder than the noise. And maybe that's the lesson I'd tell anyone watching this. Don't confuse peace with silence. Don't hand over your freedom just because someone says rules are rules. Ask questions. Read the fine print. Because there's a special kind of tyranny that hides behind politeness and paperwork. I used to think justice was about winning. Now I know. It's about enduring long enough to make the truth undeniable. So, if you've got your own HOA nightmare, or a Karen running your neighborhood like a private kingdom, tell your story. Speak up. Because every time one of us does, it gets harder for people like her to hide behind fake authority. You don't have to be loud. You just have to be stubborn. And who knows? Maybe one day, the next guy standing in his driveway, grocery bags in hand, won't have to face those flashing lights at all. Because someone like you already did. What about you? Have you ever faced a neighbor who took power too far? Or an HOA that made your life a living hell? Tell me your story in the comments. Was Karen right to enforce her rules? Or was I right to fight back? Let's hear it. Because somewhere out there, someone else might need to know they're not crazy for standing their ground.